Jean here in New York, and tonight we do have breaking news as President Trump offering this message in the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder, telling NBC News, quote, "I'd like to see the nation heal," and then adding, "but we're dealing with a radical left group of lunatics and they don't play fair and they never did." Yesterday, officials named 22-year-old Tyler Robinson as a suspect in this assassination. More details have surfaced about Robinson's background, but there are still key questions about what might have driven him, a scholarship winner from a close-knit suburban family, to that rooftop where he allegedly fatally shot Kirk. Plans for a memorial for the political activist have been announced. Turning Point USA saying that the memorial will be held next Sunday, September 21st, at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. That is an NFL stadium that seats over 63,000 people. I want to bring in CNN's Danny Freeman, who is on the ground there in Utah, where, Danny, this investigation, as we just said, is absolutely continuing and is underway. What are they looking for now?
Well, Jessica, I think that one of the biggest things that investigators are looking for at this moment is a motive here, that what made 22-year-old Tyler Robinson allegedly go up to that college event and open fire on Charlie Kirk, killing him earlier this week. And the reason that we're, of course, so interested in this and we're digging into his background is because officials, law enforcement officials, have not publicly said any motive just yet. And we're hoping to get more information over the course of the next few days, certainly as we look ahead to Robinson's first court appearance, which is coming up. But I want to tell you a little bit about what we do know right now. It's basically what we've been able to figure out through talking with people who knew Robinson and people in this southwestern Utah community where he was from and grew up, is that he led a fairly normal life down here in Washington, Utah. He was a good student. He came from a close-knit family, to parents who were registered Republicans, though he himself was not affiliated with any particular party. He had a merit scholarship to Utah State University. He actually left after just one semester, but then he enrolled in a technical college, and he was studying to become a working electrician. He was very into video games. That's something that people who knew him also emphasized to us, and that he was pretty quiet and not overtly political, although I will note that Governor Cox yesterday in that press conference did note that family members had told investigators that Robinson had grown increasingly political in the recent years leading up to this week's events. But again, despite bullet markings that gave some clues, though they were limited to memes and other video game references primarily, investigators are still looking for that clear-cut motive. I want you to take a listen to what Governor Cox actually told CNN's Anderson Cooper about this question just last night.
There's so much we still don't know, but certainly there was a radicalization that happened in a fairly short amount of time. And again, that's not too. Sometimes when we talk about people getting radicalized, that's to blame others instead of the person. And I don't want to take away that agency. This person made a terrible decision and will pay the price for that.
Now, again, Jessica, investigators are leaving no stone unturned. They've gone to the apartment complex where Robinson himself lived. They've been here in his neighborhood where his family lived as well. Remember, as I noted at the top of this hit, Jessica, the key date that we're now all looking towards is on Tuesday of this week. That's when we're expecting formal charges to be announced, and that's when we're expecting to see Robinson's first court appearance here in Utah. Hopefully, we'll get some more answers by that point. Jessica?
All right, Danny Freeman for us there in Washington, Utah. Thank you so much. And joining us now, former federal prosecutor Alyse Adamson. Alyse, thank you so much for being here with us as well. We do know that this suspect was ultimately arrested several days ago. Why is it going to take until Tuesday for these formal charges to be filed?
Well, Jessica, that's a good question. These charges are going to be state-level charges and filed in Utah State Court. Under Utah's laws, they actually have until Tuesday at 3 p.m. to file these charges. Now, what I can say as a former prosecutor is that you want to make sure that all of your evidence is as tight as possible, because he is going to be entitled to a hearing where the state is going to have to prove probable cause for all of the offenses charged. So I don't think this is a delay as much as it is prosecutors making sure that everything is in order to charge this case, because then after he's charged, he's probably going to be denied bail and he has speedy trial rights. So it's just about being thorough.
Right, and thorough, yeah. And the accused shooter is already facing initial charges, including felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, aggravated murder, obstruction of justice. It would seem that that's to hold him, right?
That's right, Jessica. So those were just initial charges to detain him. And then under Utah state law, there's going to be a formal charging document and information. And I think what is significant, Jessica, is that aggravated murder charge. We're going to see all three of those charges formalized on Tuesday, but that aggravated murder charge, that actually is death penalty eligible if special factors are present. And I want to say that I reviewed the probable cause affidavit that was used to detain Robinson up to this point, and the investigators laid out exactly the facts that are necessary for that special factor requirement, that a grave risk to a victim other than the decedent was created by the defendant's actions. And that is laid out in the affidavit by stating that there were thousands of people that were present at this rally at the time of this assassination.
Yeah. As of now, this case is not yet there aren't federal charges. But we've seen in other cases that there have been both state and federal charges. That happens sometimes. Do you think that's a possibility, and what might that look like?
Yeah, so as the case stands right now, I am not seeing an obvious federal hook. So take Luigi Mangione as an example, as a case we can distinguish. That is the individual who is accused of murdering healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, and he is facing state and federal charges. That is because he is alleged to have stalked his victim across state lines with a firearm to murder him. So that interstate component is what gave DOJ that federal hook. We don't have that interstate component here yet. We have a Utah state resident who committed this crime on private property, not on federal property. And so that is putting it in state court. There's no domestic terrorism statute on the books currently. And then with respect to a potential hate crime, which is federal, the motivation in this case, although still unclear, as we just heard from the reporting, it appears to be political, which is not a protected class under the federal hate crime statute, which is something like sexual orientation, race, or religion. So no obvious federal hook at this time. But what we do know is that the FBI is actively investigating, and there could be additional evidence developed that does give us that federal hook. And at that point, there can actually be concurrent prosecutions, meaning he can be charged both state level and federally at the same time.
And President Trump has been quite outspoken about this case, even before the suspect was arrested, including calling for the death penalty. What impact might that have on this case? What role might that play in this case?
Well, it's interesting, Jessica, because Governor Cox of Utah reminded the public before President Trump even made that comment that Utah still has the death penalty available. So to me, that signaled that prosecutors or the state were already thinking about potential death penalty in this case before a suspect was even apprehended. Now, practically speaking, when the president calls for the death penalty, that's obviously going to put more scrutiny on the prosecution team. But I think, as I already mentioned within the affidavit, seems like the prosecution team is already laying the foundation to seek the death penalty now. Now, legally speaking, as I mentioned, because there's no federal hook, the president, DOJ, they're not in a position for them to federally seek the death penalty. But I think it is highly likely, Jessica, that we are going to see after these formal charges are filed on Tuesday that Utah is seeking the death penalty in this case.
And what does that do, Alyse, practically for that case? Are there extra hearings? Are there extra layers? What does that mean as we're watching this case move forward?
That's a great question, Jessica. So the death penalty is a separate phase of the trial. It's a sentencing phase. So what it will do practically is in capital cases that are so complex and somebody's life is literally at stake, it usually slows down the case. The defense wants to try everything they possibly can to take the death penalty off the table. So I think what we will see is that this case is not going to make it into trial anytime soon. What it will look like if the case goes to trial is that Robinson he will put on his evidence. If he is ultimately convicted, then the case will start the next phase where a hearing will happen in front of the jury for the government to make their case for why they should impose the death penalty. That's what it will look like. So it's a multi-phased approach, and it will take a little time to get there.